Hello there. Welcome to the Soil and Roots podcast, journeying together into deep discipleship. I'm Brian Fisher, and this is episode 128, entitled Gentleness on the Brute Squad. I'm coming to you today from Fish Tank Studios outside of Dallas, Texas. Handsome Kyle and Doc will rejoin me for episode 129. As always, if you're interested in the ministry of Soil and Roots and how we cultivate deep discipleship worldwide, how we join with Jesus in that endeavor, you can learn more about us at soilandroots.org. If you've been with us for any length of time, you probably know that we approach discipleship from a admittedly different angle than much of Western Christianity. We spend a considerable amount of time exploring our inner lives, our stories, God's grand story, the kingdom, and what it means to become more like Jesus in community with other people. We need each other in our quest to become more like Jesus. It's been a wild ride so far, and frankly, I'm thrilled that you continue to journey with us. If you like to read, I am writing just about weekly over on Substack. That's another social media platform. That's where I do most of my research and thinking on newer topics these days. So if you're over there on Substack, just search for Soil and Roots, and you'll find me there. You can subscribe for our weekly articles. Soil and Roots is a non-profit ministry organization. If you like the podcast, if it's been helpful to you, or the book perhaps, or the articles, or the information, or perhaps you've tried a greenhouse, we'd love to have your financial support. We are 100% donor-funded. You can give safely and securely at the website at soilandroots.org. The reason that Soil and Roots exists is to help resolve what's called the Great Omission, the fact that modern Christianity struggles to make genuine disciples, people whose lives are centered around the journey of becoming more like Jesus over time. We consider here the solution to the Great Omission to be what we refer to as deep discipleship. How do we become deeper people? At least in the West, we generally function from the idea that we are supposed to get saved and then wait around until we die and go to heaven. Except that isn't really the message of the Bible. Jesus is the King of the universe, and he invites us to follow him as he makes all things new and he brings about new creation. We do this by becoming more like him over time, that we increasingly think and act and relate and love like him. We intentionally engage in this journey of what is essentially character formation, where we become more like Jesus from the inside out, and frankly, that process, that relational journey differs from what Western Christianity often promotes. This inner formation begins not only with intellectually knowing that Jesus loves us, but also living in the reality of experiencing that love. We are restful, peaceful, less anxious, less fearful, even when life, frankly, suggests the opposite. And many of us struggle to live in that reality of God's delight, in his ever-present safety, or in the abundance of his love. We're either trying to do things for him or earn his love, or we're silently wondering why he would even like us at all. Paul talks about knowing the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge and being filled to the fullness of God. The Bible promises a peace that passes all understanding and a profound inner joy. Is that the life we're living? Well, we're just about done with season 6, which is entitled The Object of Our Formation. If we are to become more like Jesus over time, what is Jesus really like? So here at Soil and Roots, we promote a discipleship approach that involves gathering with others who are also apprenticing with Jesus in small, intentionally formative communities designed to shape our character to be like Christ, and that process starts with coming to and accepting, experiencing God's delight in us. We share our stories, we delve into the ideas that have shaped us, and explore the kingdom, God's current and ongoing reign over all aspects of life. At its core, this is how hearts are formed and transformed. Our hearts don't learn by instruction. They learn through relationship, through experience. There is no shortage of biblical instruction today, which is good, but I wonder if we become so focused on the head that we've forgotten about our hearts. we become very focused on going and doing, when often what our hearts most need at times is resting and just being. So today, let's explore another trait of Jesus that we might want to ask him to instill in ourselves, and this is the characteristic of gentleness, which may seem simple on the surface, but there's more to it, as you might expect from a Soil and Roots podcast. So let's get started. It might be hard to find a more beloved cult classic than the film The Princess Bride, with its countless quotable lines. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. I didn't do that very well. Among the movie's iconic characters, the wrestler Andre the Giant Rosimov plays Fezzik, who loves rhyming and is big and strong enough to carry 3 people on his back as he's scaling the cliffs of insanity. He's on the Brute Squad, though another character says that Fezzik is the Brute Squad. In real life, Andre was a French wrestler who stood 7 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 520 pounds, all the result of an excess growth hormone. Actor Cary Elwes, who played opposite Andre in many scenes as Wesley, the dread pirate Roberts, often speaks fondly of Andre in interviews. He once recalled that Andre said, "We big people don't live long." Andre did pass away in 1993 at the young age of 46. Cary Elwes said of his friend, "He was such a truly gentle soul. For a guy who could crush you like swatting a mosquito, he was so incredibly gentle." Andre Rosimov is the kind of person we think of when someone uses the phrase gentle giant. As Andre's character says in the movie, "It's not my fault being the biggest and the strongest. I don't even exercise." We can tend to think of gentleness in the same mental basket as meekness and mildness. Meek as a lamb, mild as a dove. It brings up images of small, sweet animals like lambs and bunnies and baby chicks. So maybe it's understandable that gentleness can be associated with weakness. I'm not trying to be down on bunnies and baby chicks, but they're not exactly strong. They're typically prey. They need constant looking after before they get eaten. This perception is also partly due to a powerful strain in modern Western Christianity when it comes to men and masculinity. This camp sees it as very important for Christian men to be, well, manly men of stern stuff. No weak handshakes, no flab, no tears. The kind of man that General George Patton would be proud of. Patton famously said, "We herd sheep, we drive cattle, we lead people, lead me, follow me, or get out of the way." Christian men are urged to be strong, whether from the pulpit or from the pages of Christian books, or at those ever-popular men's retreats, I put that in quotes, were apparently meant to be tough, warriors, champions. But real men still deal with things. It's masculine to be emotional and have strong feelings, at least if we consider someone like David to be a manly man, to be a real man. It's manly to be a protector and provider and to know your own heart. Christian men are likely to be more encouraged to be tough and shoot things, but to be gentle, well, maybe not as much. Maybe that's because gentleness is often assumed to be the same as weakness. In our culture, the weak are steamrolled. The gentle are obliterated. The meek and mild are trampled by the powerful, the bold, and the bullies, whether it's in TV or movies or politics. Being gentle is sort of like being nice. Sure, it sounds good, but nice guys don't actually take home the trophy or win the war or score the corner office or get the nice girl. Nice guys finish last, at least, or so it seems. On the opposite side of that spectrum are the name it and claim it folks who say that good guys always win, or at least the godly ones do. In this camp, the right form of Christianity almost always guarantees health or wealth and success. Just raise your hand and name it and claim it, say the prayer, and you can be highly favored and live your best life now. So depending on our particular experience with the modern church, we might develop ideas, again, underlying assumptions from which we function, ideas about Christianity that are all about being strong, a winner, seizing our supposedly God-given destiny to prosper and succeed in all things, or we can fall into ideas of Jesus as a gentle, meek, nice guy who paid the price by being the ultimate victim, and therefore we think that we should be the victim as well. Francis de Sales served as Bishop of Geneva in the early 1600s and is a Catholic saint. He was known for his deep, abiding faith and his gentle approach to the religious divisions resulting from the Protestant Reformation. And de Sales had it right when he said this, quote, "Nothing is so strong as gentleness, nothing so gentle as real strength," end quote. Gentleness involves the capacity to hold power in check and apply it precisely as intended to serve those under your protection. Perhaps you've seen one or two or 18 of the Marvel movies. There's a moment in Avengers Age of Ultron where Black Widow, one of the female characters, is hurt on a floating island and can't cross the vast gulf between her and safety. And here comes the Hulk, Bruce Banner, strong enough to throw boulders with his bare hands, and he carefully cradles her in his arms and leaps across the distance to where it's safe. His almost unlimited strength and power are used to bridge the gap, to carry her across where she couldn't do herself, and tenderly set her down in safety. And perhaps now that's getting us closer to a correct picture of Jesus and his gentleness. Real gentleness isn't about having no capacity to harm or destroy. Things that are soft and non-confrontational and unaggressive, like bunnies and chicks, aren't truly being gentle. They're simply, just being themselves. They couldn't be anything else. A tiger that lays down with a dog as it's befriended, holding the puppy in its paws rather than, say, eating it, is being truly gentle. Gentleness can't exist except where there is power. And gentleness doesn't exist except where that power is used for love and for protection. So one way to describe gentleness is strength restrained. It is power refined through practice, experience, wisdom. Gentleness is Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid. It's the power of a martial arts master to break every bone in his student's body, but instead uses it to give a soft tap, indicating where they went wrong, and then to teach them to improve. Jesus displays extreme gentleness, and he displayed extreme power. He was the ultimate warrior and the ultimate protector. So we might want to reconsider our view of gentleness, particularly when it comes to this concept of masculinity. There's nothing inherently feminine about gentleness, and for men or women, there is nothing weak about it. We need both men and women of God who dare to show true gentleness in the face of aggression and mockery, which, of course, with social media is a minute-by-minute occurrence. We need people who know that strength doesn't have to prove itself, that a person of real power is secure in that power without needing to flaunt it. Have you ever watched an argument or a debate where one person is angry and flying off the handle and yelling and calling insults, and the other person is just sitting there calm and collected and composed? Who seems to be more in control of the situation? It takes strength to face aggression and to respond with gentleness, whether with your kids or with your spouse or with an opponent. Gentleness is a man nailed to the cross who could call down every legion of angels, could speak a word and the earth itself would rip apart to swallow up those who hurt him, and instead he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That is gentleness. Paul writes that our gentleness should be evident to all and listed as one of the fruits of the Spirit. And when Peter says that we should always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that we have, he says we are to do so with gentleness. In Vine's Dictionary of the Bible, Vine notes that the Greek words for gentle and gentleness can mean seemly and fitting. This appears when Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus is using a metaphor, talking about a yoke like oxen would be placed into to pull a plow or a cart. The yoke represents discipleship, following Jesus, apprenticing with him. And it contrasts that with the very heavy burdens of religious legalism. The Greek word here translated easy means fit for use and implies something good, something useful, even pleasant. So Christ is not just saying his yoke is simple, like easy as opposed to difficult, or that it's lightweight as opposed to heavy. He says it's productive, it's morally excellent, and even enjoyable. It's well-fitting. It is a yoke designed just for us. It's the work we were made to do and the weight we were always meant to carry. Gentleness is not reserved for those who we think deserve it. It's not just for those we've decided are good. Of course, it's easier to be gentle and merciful to those who strike us as good, kind, generous people, especially if we see some of ourselves in them. But when someone is too different from us, or doesn't share our values or our viewpoints, or acts in ways that are generally opposite to us, suddenly being gentle and merciful doesn't come quite so readily. We might try instead to be like the gentle rain that falls on the just and the unjust, that it will bless those receiving and those giving. Children who are raised with gentleness develop better emotional regulation skills. If you recall our discussion a few months ago on being safe, seen, soothed, and secure, the 4 things we need to be securely relationally attached, this concept develops and ties right into that. Gentle parenting helps children manage their feelings effectively and feel connected with their caregivers relationally. Gentleness helps children learn empathy, develop social skills, and build higher levels of self-esteem and self-awareness. Parenting approaches that incorporate gentleness and warmth tend to yield better mental health outcomes and long-term well-being. Well, what's true for children is doubtlessly true for adults. Gentleness is vital in the formation of a child's character, and it's still essential in the formation of our character as adults. We don't stop needing a gentle touch, a kind word, or a merciful response just because we grow up. We're better off when we get it, and certainly when we give it. All right, so let's apply this concept of gentleness to the 4 relationships, which we've talked about a billion times here: our relationship with God, with others, with ourselves, and with creation and culture. Those are the 4 relationships in which God plants every person. Well, let's start off with a tricky one. What does it look like to be gentle with ourselves? That's probably something we haven't spent a lot of time contemplating. Well, it means holding in check the power to harm ourselves. Sure, we know just how to tear ourselves down. We can be, and often are, our own worst enemy. We know the words, and in particular the thought patterns and the actions that will cut us to the bone. But gentleness exercises restraint. Gentleness tells those cutting voices exactly where they can go. A Tibetan monk named Thupten Yeshi put it this way: be gentle first with yourself if you wish to be gentle with others. Gentleness is characterized by forgiveness, encouragement, uplift. Gentleness to yourself treats your own heart with respect and kindness, the way that God treats us. You know that whole golden rule thing? Treat others as you would want to be treated? Well, it applies in reverse. Make sure you're treating yourself as Jesus would want you to treat others. Depending on your religious upbringing, this can be a difficult, different perspective to adopt. If you grew up in a home or church where sin was a constant focal point, you may experience excessive guilt or debilitating shame whether you're sinning or not. It's not that sin is unimportant to our journey, obviously it is, but many, many moderns have grown up in a religious environment that promote the idea that a life with Christ is solely about managing sin. We've been told so many times that our good works are like filthy rags and that there is no one righteous, no, not one. But we may not have been reminded nearly as often that we are made in the image of God, that we are created to co-rule the earth with our King, and that we, right now, are crowned with glory and majesty. That's all in the Bible, too. But let's face it, we've heard far more about our sin, at least in this age, than about our glory. Well, what about others? What does it mean to be gentle in our relationship with other people? As we've discussed before, I don't think this means we allow ourselves to have anything done to us without consequences. Loving, God-honoring relationships do not permit one person to harm another. Jesus never gave up his agency, and I don't think he expects us to give up our agency either. On the other hand, the Bible does tell us that love keeps no record of wrongs, that we are more likely to achieve healthier outcomes if we focus on the current issue rather than dwelling on everything the person did wrong over the past 10 years. So we can respect the dignity of the person, remembering they're one of God's image bearers also. If we offer constructive criticism, we can do it with gentleness, with kindness, and only after we examine our own hearts. We discussed this in the last episode. What does it mean to be gentle with God? I'm not sure we've put a whole lot of thought into that either. What does it mean that our behavior, our relationship with God is gentle? It might mean leaning into the tenderness with which God approaches us. There may indeed be times that we want to hold him at arm's length, that we want to rail and shout at him, and there is a time and place for that. Lament is a very important part of the human condition. There is a time and place for being raw, for being vulnerable, and even angry with God, but we maintain the relationship. And when we have worked through our challenges and our issues with him, and we have wrestled through our hurts or our questions, we press again into that gentle tenderness of the very best kind of father. He describes himself sometimes as a mother who longs to gather her children under her wings. That's a picture of gentleness. Sometimes our hearts need to be softened before we can experience it. Sometimes we need to be gentle toward God in order to understand his gentleness toward us. And lastly, what does it mean to be gentle in our relationship with creation and culture? It seems a bit strange. Well, if you've been with us for any length of time, you've heard me discuss creation and culture as this fourth relationship. I emphasize this relationship a lot, so much, because I think it's the one that we've most forgotten and has become most damaged in modern Christianity. Although I think the relationship with ourselves runs a close second to being forgotten. So how can we treat creation and culture gently? Well, maybe you've seen a small child catch a butterfly. They cup their hands around it, holding it softly, aware that too much pressure can harm its wings, and then they release it into the air and watch it fly away. That's being a caretaker. It's one way to show gentleness towards creation. It really stems from a mindset of being a steward over the earth, an earth in which God has entrusted to us. This differs from exploiting it and using up resources as rapidly as they are depleting, without considering the impact on future generations and the kind of world they will live in. The Cultural Commission, in that verse from Genesis 1:28, tells us that we are to rule and reign this earth with and on behalf of our King. Modern Christianity gives this virtually no thought or effort to the care of creation and culture, primarily because we have become far more concerned with the conversion of souls than we are with the redemption of all of creation. This is a result of the reductionist gospel that we've explored here before. That view is more Plato than Jesus. Plato taught that the world and the body are inherently bad, they're evil, and therefore true life is found only in the spiritual realm. That is not at all what Jesus taught or modeled, as evidenced by the fact that he is here to bring in new creation. It's also why I've argued elsewhere that Jesus' followers should be the most environmentally conscious of anyone. I'm not talking about tree hugging, but I am talking about developing and maintaining a world that uses resources wisely, protects and cares for nature, and takes our responsibility to steward the earth and our cultures seriously and gently. Well, in the book of 1 Kings, the prophet Elijah is on the run from his enemies, and he's reached the end of his rope. He despairs so much that he lies down under a bush to die and prays that God would take his life. But an angel comes and gives him a snack, and Elijah finally reaches a mountain where God says, "Go stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." And then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart, shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And the Bible doesn't specify what the gentle whisper says, but this is what the Lord chose to inhabit. After Elijah hears that gentle whisper, after all the violence of the preceding signs, he's finally ready to have an honest conversation with the Lord. The power of the Lord, the might of the Lord, is evident in the wind and the earthquake and the fire. Sounds like a band. But it's the gentle whisper that he actually inhabits. And Elijah responds and takes courage and returns to God's plan for his life. We might ask ourselves, what is my perception of God and his gentleness? Do I expect him to be gentle toward me and others? Or am I functioning from the idea that God is up there with a lightning bolt just ready to zap me the moment I get out of line? And let's be honest, we sometimes hope he zaps others who we don't think are towing the line. How does our view of God's gentleness influence how we are kind to ourselves and others? Do we see God as someone who actively seeks us out with love and genuinely desires good things for us? As we press into that sort of love, we can see that God's gentleness is more than just holding back. It's not just the restraint of keeping that lightning bolt in his hand. His gentleness means he is eagerly, persistently, and tenderly pursuing us. We might sing along with the old hymn, Gentle Jesus, which Charles Wesley wrote in 1767. Loving Jesus, gentle Lamb, in thy gracious hands I am. Make me, Savior, what thou art. Live thyself within my heart. I shall then show forth thy praise, serve thee all my happy days. Then the world shall always see Christ, the Holy Child, in me. Thanks so much for being with me today. If you'd like to connect with us, as always, just shoot us an email at fish@soilandroots.org. Yes, I know it's a mixed metaphor. Today's episode was written by Doc, and I edited it, and Zach Fisher produced it. Zach also provides all of the music for the Soil and Roots ecosystem, and you can check him out at FishU on Spotify. I hope you enjoyed today's episode on gentleness, and we'll see you next time.